another section that has to do with harmony and balance. So I want to have us very, very crystal clear about the harmony and balance before we get into this disruption, okay? So natural functioning is just the way things in the universe work. Yeah? I've never seen an apple tree produce oranges. Well, that's just natural functioning. An apple tree naturally functions to be an apple tree, and all human beings and social groups have the capacity, individually or collectively, to be in natural functioning. Natural functioning is for us to walk, talk, take care of ourselves and our responsibilities. Natural functioning for a group is to, what is the order of business at that moment? Well, we're not talking about theory, but what is a group getting together? What is a family getting together to do? What is the mission of the family? What is the relationship to the children? What is the relation at work? It's what you produce each moment, each moment, each moment, each moment. Okay? So this is a key point about optimal functioning, in that each moment, each E-loop does its best to optimize functioning at that level. However, if one focuses on that level, the functioning may not appear optimal. Okay, what does that mean? Well, say you're out in the cold, and we're looking at the optimal functioning of your toes. It's very, very cold, and you're stuck in a blizzard. What is the optimal functioning of that toe? That toe is going to cut off its blood supply to preserve you, to preserve the body. So the optimal functioning, looked at just in that particular loop, looks like it's not optimal functioning. How can a toe cutting off its own blood supply be optimal functioning? So optimal functioning, to look at optimal functioning, you have to look at what? You have to look at the whole net. Because otherwise, it doesn't look like it's optimal functioning. For instance, you have a soldier. He gives up his life to save the unit. If you look at the soldier, saying, well, why would he want to commit suicide? Why would he want to get killed? That to look at optimal functioning, we need to look at the net, okay? And that is crucial. That basically, that we need the whole gestalt. So whether an event or happening appears positive or negative, deep or superficial, sacred or mundane, the total reality always involves the total functioning of the net, okay? That's the principle. I'm not saying we need to consciously be aware of that, but you don't have to consciously be aware of that because it's in every cell of your body. It's in your DNA. I'm not saying what we should do. I'm just saying what is the rhyme and reason of this net. I'm not giving any advice on how to do it. The expert on each one of our lives is sitting in your chair right here, right now. So we're just trying to look at a model and see how this fits in with the way we take care of our lives. Systems. That if someone says, well, what is a system? How many minutes do you need to describe what a system is? You know, if your little 5-year-old say, hey, mommy, what's a system? I don't know what a system is. You're going to go to Google. System is as simple as that. A system is 2 or more things working together to accomplish a mission, period. It's 2 or more things working together to accomplish a mission. 2 or more things working together to accomplish a mission. That is what a system is. That is the simplicity of a system. It isn't any more complicated than that. You know, we get too much in our heads when we look at systems, because if we look at it very simple, just 2 or more people cooperating to unload groceries. So let's look at a system a little more closely. So we have a home heating system that's simply a heater, a thermometer, and a thermostat. And a thermostat is the central control. All systems work like this. There's not one system in the universe that works any differently than this, okay? Very simple. So what happens, the thermostat is just programmed to keep the temperature, say, between 68 and 72. So if the temperature gets colder in the room, the room is sort of a bit of existence. So basically what happens is that the thermostat, the thermometer says, hey, it's below 66, so then it goes to the thermostat, and then it sends a message out to the heater, and then the heater turns on. And when it gets too hot, so there's sort of a sensing of where it is, and then there's a feedback from the central control. That's how all systems work. So is there any question about all systems are the same as this home heating system in the winter? Okay? Every system is the same. So even in your body, all these systems are the same, whether it's temperature, whether it's blood glucose, whether it's the endocrine system, they always work there's sort of a sensory component and a motor component, okay? So it's simply, your reflex, you sense it, and then there's a muscle response. So every system is the same, okay? There isn't any system in the universe that's any different, and we sort of postulate that the regulation of our biological system, the regulations of every physical system, has similarity to how the system of the net works, okay? We don't know how it works, but we gain some clues. So every system works the way it does because the net works the way it does, okay? The pervading animating principle works the way it does. So all the biological systems works in the same way. They have a central control, then they have a motor and a sensory, and that's how our brain works. Okay, so now we're going to have some fun and talk about some neuroscience. And this is a great picture, great graph that Cole created that shows how the brain works. And you're going to get a copy of this. You're going to have a handout, but you can make notes, but you're going to get a handout, which this is on the handout. So what it is that the central executive network is sort of in blue. This is located in the front of the brain, and there's attention network, a top one that has to do with focusing attention globally and then sort of focusing attention on detail. And that sort of coordinates. Everything is in harmony and in balance. When you're hearing something, this one, the auditory one, is activated. When you're seeing, the visual, and when you're moving your hands, there's this one, when you're getting sensations. So basically, all these are working in coordination. Now, there are these orange guys here that has to do with the default mode network. And these are the psychosocial salience processing. This is what we're sort of, those of us who are in the mental health aspects, this is a key network in here, and we'll get into that. But this salience network is a key, because this sort of, when a baby screams, your salience network is lit up and it gets your attention, okay? That's very important with the salience network. That when you have pain, it lights up the salience network and then it gets attention. But basically all this works together. So if you're running, that basically you're in this, somatosensory network, body processing network. If you're listening here, this is a little bit, but basically it works in harmony and balance, okay? So this would explain, no matter what you're doing, and you put people in MRIs and do functional MRIs, and when people are listening, that it lights up these networks, but they're all sort of in harmony and balance, and we know where these networks are in the brain, and I'm not going to get into this at this point, but basically what the brain networks E-loops do is they coordinate all these so they work in harmony and balance, okay? So basically how these brain networks fit into this net is that the net just takes these particular brain networks with the C-loops and the central control and coordinates them. So basically it just happens that this is just the way it works, though those particular networks are all coordinated and they all work together, okay? And that is really a great illustration of how the brain functions, and it's simple. So when they do these MRIs and when they do these studies, they find that these psychosocial networks, that 60 to 80% of the energy occurs in circuits unrelated to external events. It's pretty amazing that if you really look at it, that just to keep a representation going on in the mind is 60 to 80%. So maybe you're paying attention is 5%, okay, here, but basically 80%. So these brain findings indicate that there exists an internal picture of the external world that allows our brains to function. So if 60 to 80% are not connected, that there's a lot going on, and what it does, we'll get into that, it creates sort of an internal representation of the world. And then, the researchers have found that only a trickle of the information from the environment gets into the brain. If you really look at it, how much information can you get visually? You know, you don't get much more information than a camera. Yeah? And then it's reduced even more. By the time it gets to the occipital cortex, it's reduced millions and millions of times. So it isn't as though when we're looking that picture, that the brain, 60 to 80% creates the picture in your mind, okay? That the camera just has a photographic image. But what we take in, so basically what we're driving at is there needs to be a representational world. There needs to be a picture in your mind of a tree, so you can recognize the tree. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. But the central point here is that we function not only because of the little bit of inputs, okay? You know, the sensory inputs from that simple circle diagram, but we function mainly because of the 60 to 80% of what's going on. And what's going on in these circuits, it determines who you are. Basically, you don't get who you are from what you see, that the outside world is internally manufactured over time. It's critically important that we understand that point, because usually, you know, before I understood this, I was saying, well, you know, it's all there, but you can't take it in. There's no way you can take in this vista. If you just look around the room, there's no way that information is going to go to the brain. The brain is a magnificent structure that enables us to have all the information and the processing that's going on. It's inconceivable how this could be. We're going to jump from the brain to the mind, okay? So how are we going to do that? But the E-loops orchestrating minds are similar to those orchestrating the body. The difference is that in the mind, the informational processing and transfer is handled mainly by thoughts and by thought precursors rather than by electrical discharges. So your mind works with thoughts, okay? This is how the mind functions. The brain functions by electrical discharges. Will there be a correspondence between electrical discharges in the brain, secretions of the brain, in the mind? That is as imperceptible as a net. But the brain has this ability to, the human brain, to be able to gather together thoughts, images, and so forth. And this leads to a quantum increase in the complexity of the central control. So what we're saying, you know, people are always talking about artificial intelligence. And, you know, to me, they're still talking about the abacus. All the computers just work with switches on, off. There isn't any computers that work with thoughts. So artificial intelligence is sort of in the abacus. So what makes the mind is the ability to work with thoughts. So we have in our mind a representational world, and the brain supplies the hardware for that. And it's a dynamic totality that orchestrates all these innumerable bits of information to form an internal picture of the self and the external world. The representational world is where a sense of self is integrated with an outer social world. That is, it's the seat of identity. The representational world is absolutely crucial in all understanding. That without the representational world, and a lot of people, Freud understood this, Klein understood this, all the Erickson, all the object relations people, all the self theory, that they understood the power of the concept of the representational world. This is where everything takes place. And the representational world is located, look at your ball, it's located right in the central control, okay? That's where the that gives the map, just like in this auto driver systems. If you don't have a picture of what's going on, or the navigation systems of airplanes, you need a picture each moment of where you are and where you're going, okay? So each moment the airplane looks, hey, am I on course or off course? And it changes, the thrust, it changes the direction. So basically, in this central control, it has the moment-by-moment mission. So the central control is great in orchestrating the ever-changing mind-body naturally functional systems that have the primary task of optimizing maturation and development. We're sort of switching now to babies, okay? So the whole aspect of bonding, attachment, individuation, all these are modulated in the representational world. For instance, a baby crawling, it needs to have a representation of its arms, its legs, the floor, that basically, and then the coordination of what each one of these innumerable systems are doing, how the hands are coordinated, whether the long tracks, the motor tracks are myelinated so that they'll give fast signals, like babies at 4 months, 6 months, these tracks are not myelinated, so they can't get information back and forth. So it's impossible. No matter how bright this baby is, it's not going to be able to walk at 6 months or 8 months because these tracks are not myelinated. So there's a whole bunch. So basically, it's not easy to crawl. You need to have a representation of your whole body, how it works, what the floor is. So this baby is crawling around, and this crawling, and then there's this yellow thing or this gray thing, and it smashes into it, bumps its head. The baby will continue to do that unless it develops in its representational world that this gray thing is a wall and it hurts. So basically, it gradually develops a picture of what mom's eyes, mom's breast, dad, the world. So basically, without that picture, the baby will keep smashing into the external world. It needs to have a picture in its mind so it can then represent, just like there's a picture of what mom and dad looks like in the representational world. And then there's a stranger that comes and the baby cries, yeah? We'll say that stranger is a house guest that's going to be there for a period of time. The baby then develops a representation of what this guest is, and there will be no more stranger anxiety because of the changes in the representational world. So what is the central control, okay? The central control is not a localized structure with boundaries. It's not like the ego or the id or the superego or the self. It's just as a nexus of higher intelligence and functioning. The central control does not see, does not hear, does not walk, does not act, but it just regulates, okay? So we're talking about interesting things in the black box. So we're saying that there's something that is a meta system, something that it is above in all of us, okay? And it sort of seems to us that it functions mechanistically, that we're just a simple system. True. But we're connected to the essence of all systems, of all humanity, of all existence by this nut of existence, okay? So the fact that we operate like a system, that's how we're put together. However, we're different from all other systems because of the representational world and the connection that we have with the net. So what we're talking about, central control, when you have a patient, and you basically, it's in a sense, from this point of view, one central control to another. That basically you're working together to do therapy. It isn't you're working together to be a therapist and the patient's working together to be a patient. That moment you're working together to do therapy. Plain, simple, no more, no less. You're not this astronomical self, and they're not that suffering self. That basically you are connected at that moment to fulfill a particular function, no more, no less. And the working alliance that you have with your client is dependent upon, at some level intuitively, or those of us who are not on our tiptoes, that having this particular model. So natural functioning is just all your activities through daily life, and when you're naturally functioning, the thoughts are free of mind clutter, your body is sort of unified. So basically, natural functioning is just how we take care of ourselves and our responsibilities each moment. And when we're naturally functioning, natural functioning is in harmony and in balance with the net. And this is one of the characteristics of natural functioning. So, natural functioning is just you have thoughts. The thoughts are sort of unencumbered, meaning the thoughts are task-oriented. They're not wandering off task. You're just, when you're sweeping the floor, you're just sweeping the floor. When you're working with a client, you're just working with a client. And then you free function, and then there's a unified mind, body, spiritual state. That basically, when you're free functioning, and a lot of times I'm not free functioning, but when you're free functioning, you are in harmony and balance with the net. So, natural functioning is a birthright. It's rooted in each and every one of us. If every person in a social group has natural functioning, humankind would be resonating with universal harmony and balance. Given human history and the current state of suffering, inequality, and social injustice, there must be, as was pointed out before, a powerful alternative way of human functioning. Okay? I think this is just what we all know by our observation. And granted that we think we have free choice, and natural functions are birthright, and it's so appealing, why don't we just select it? Why don't we just free function and be happy campers?